Hello and welcome to Kingsborough Focus, where we highlight the voices and stories shaping our campus community. I'm your host, Noah, and today I'm honored to speak with a truly inspiring figure at Kingsborough Community College, Dr. Keisha Thompson. She's a professor of psychology in the Department of Behavioral Science and the co-creator of the historical underrepresented faculty and staff resource center here at KCC. A native of Trinidad and Tobago, born and raised in Brooklyn, Dr. Thompson brings a powerful blend of academic excellence and community empowerment to our work. And she also has a lot of diversity, mental health, and social justice in her work. Not only shaped her for teaching and research, but also made a long-lasting impact beyond the classroom. Dr. Thompson, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I want to ask you this first. What inspired you to pursue this career for psychology?
So I didn't have a direct path to psychology. It kind of meandered.
Okay.
I started out wanting to do psychology as a major in my undergraduate education. I took my first psych class and I slept through most of it. And I just didn't enjoy it. So at that point, I switched my major to corporate communications, and I enjoyed that. But at some point, I always worked with young people on a volunteer basis, and so that sort of brought me back into the realm of counseling. And once I was in the realm of counseling for education, I then went back to psychology and realized that I enjoyed being in the classroom more than I enjoyed doing therapy services.
So it was a thing where you had to kind of switch your major to realize that you liked that major you did before, but in a different environment.
Yeah, so I had to spend time sort of learning different things and experiencing the world, because between my undergraduate degree and my first graduate degree, I just worked. Oh. And so when you enter into the world of work, you get a different sense as to who you are and the things that are important to you.
So what I'm hearing was that you were able to grow from that.
Oh, definitely.
Okay. Now, the next thing I'm going to ask you is, you worked in a variety of settings, as we just spoke about. So which, from federal prisons, I've heard, and VA medical assistants and everything. Now, what have you learned, specifically from all those experiences?
Don't shy away from hard stuff, right? So, working in a prison camp. So it was a federal prison camp. So it was a federal prison for women in Texas that were nonviolent offenders. So they were there mostly on drug charges or conspiracy charges or things like that, or financial crimes. And so when you think about a prison, you're like, I don't want to go, because when you work in a prison, there are a lot of restrictions, right? So you're thinking these people are difficult, the environment is difficult. The same thing with the VA. Working with veterans is not for the faint of heart. And so I think initially I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but those were the most rewarding experiences that I've had. So by and large, I just learned the things that I don't necessarily think are gonna come natural to me or that might be difficult, I'm gonna gain a lot from them.
And you're the co-creator of the historical underrepresented faculty and staff resource in KCC.
Yes.
So what is the whole goal? What is the goal for that?
I know it's a mouthful.
Okay.
And so historically underrepresented means that throughout the history of Kingsborough and CUNY, there haven't been a lot of people who look like me. There haven't been a lot of people of color that have been at the institution for long periods of time, that have climbed the ranks, right? And so that means that sometimes things can be very difficult in terms of people of color. Particularly at Kingsborough, it's going to be Black and brown people, right? People of African descent from across the diaspora, as well as people of Hispanic or Latino descent. And so when you look at the institution, folks like that are not in full-time positions at the same rate. Folks like that are not getting the promotions at the same rate. And so what that means is, for us, it's important that we empower people to be able to stay here and be successful here, as well as hold the institution accountable for the things that they need to do to make that possible.
Okay, well that's actually perfect because it kind of leads into our next question. So like, what drew you into like blackness in Africa dysphoria? Like, what was that main thing?
I think so. Living in different contexts, blackness means different things, right? So, as you mentioned at the beginning, I was born in Trinidad and Tobago, which is by and large a population of black and brown people. There are intricacies, there are various prejudices and things like that, but I didn't grow up being a minority. I grew up with a black prime minister. I grew up with that means my head of state was black, my teachers were black, people in authority were black. And so I grew up not understanding that blackness could be a consequence to me. When you live within the United States, the color of your skin can be a consequence to you. And so making that transition into the US where that happened, particularly when I moved from New York to Texas to go to school, where I was even more so in a minority, because even in New York, I was still like in a black Caribbean community. And I was around a diverse group of people. But when you're in the setting that I was in, where you're like one of three, and people are constantly coming at you, you start experiencing injustices in a very different way, and you have to figure out how you're going to survive. And a lot of times the way you survive is by reaching across the diaspora to people who have similar experiences like you and sort of supporting each other. And so that opened up my eyes to like, what does it really mean to be black in America?
Okay, so what I'm getting from that, like the switch from Trinidad to America was like pretty big.
Oh yeah, I mean, I came to the US when I was like 12 years old in the 7th grade. Kids are mean, I didn't talk like this. And I don't talk like this to my family. But I learned to talk like this because it was a matter of survival.
Right.
Right, it was a matter of how am I gonna make my way in this world. And also when I came here, it was the first time that I wasn't in school with my older brother. So I have a brother that's 4 years older than me, and for the most part, we always overlapped in school. I have 5 siblings, and
all from different age groups?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. And for my primary school experience, which is like elementary school, I had all the same teachers as 4 of my older siblings. So safety wasn't a thing. And quite frankly, I was in Crown Heights at a particular time when it was difficult to be there. And so, yeah, it was that transition was rough.
Sounds like, I've definitely heard about like the times in Crown Heights before, so I've heard it was definitely rough back then.
Back then.
Yeah. Well, at least so what I've heard.
That's fine, it's fine.
All right, so I know you created a podcast series called like #Goals Brunch. Right?
So the Goals Brunch was more of an in-person gathering where I would gather with women maybe once every 3 months. We would meet at a restaurant, and I did that for about 5 years. We survived the pandemic a little bit because we even did it virtually during the pandemic. So we would meet and we would just talk about our goals, and I would just talk about like what are some of the things that are getting in the way of you achieving your goals. And from that, I created the podcast, Misadventures of an Inspired Woman.
Okay, so what drove you to even create this podcast? It has nothing to do with like academics.
So this is my job, it's not my life.
Okay.
Right, so everything that I do is not gonna be psychology lecture,
right,
research. Like I spend a lot of time, for this job, I've had to spend a lot of time in the classroom, I've had to spend a lot of time writing and doing research. Like there are other parts of life as well, right? And so what was important to me, again, when I was in Texas, I really understood the power of community and supporting each other. And in New York City, we're always kind of like go, 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 go. And sometimes we take for granted that we're not really connecting with each other. And we need connection, we need encouragement, we need a network that's gonna support us. And so the whole idea for the brunches was to create that. Because I'd lived in all these different states and I have friends all over, they would look on social media or see a video I posted and they're like, man, I really wish I could have been a part of that conversation, or I really wish I could be there. And so I was like, let me take some of the concepts from Goals Brunch, interview women who have failed, because people always tell you their glory, the glory in their story. Let me interview women who have failed and how they sort of dealt with that. That way, people that are not physically in New York can be a part of the community.
I like that. Like you get like someone like who failed in their department, and then it'll also like be like maybe like an inspiration for people who's listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool. All right. So in your work, you often emphasize the importance of cultural identity and mental health. How do you think this like applies to students?
So how you feel about who you are is going to impact how you move through the world. So how you feel about the color of your skin, how you feel about your heritage, your culture, your practices, how you feel about your hair, how you feel about all those things are going to impact how you show up in the world. Are you going to show up in the world as a proud person, or are you going to show up in the world as someone who's very insecure because you don't look like everybody that's around you, right? Or you don't look like what society ascribes as the standard of beauty, or the standard of success, or the standard of professionalism, right? So for students, a lot of times I know when you come from a background that's different than the culture that you're being raised in, there's this pull and tug. Like your parents want you to, adhere to the old ways, and this is how we did it, and this is how you're going to do it. And they don't understand this world that you're living in. And I always tell my students, if you are a hyphenated person, you're African American, you're Italian American, you're Caribbean American, you're literally African American because you have direct ties to the continent, you live on the hyphen, and that's a very powerful place to live, because that means that you know how to navigate two different cultures. And it's something to take pride in, and it's something that you should harness to figure out how to be successful in the world.
Okay. Now, I know that you were like you were an immigrant, and you were also like the first to graduate college, right?
My brother, again, 4 years older than me, so we're the first generation.
Oh,
so our parents did not graduate college. Our parents, I don't think my parents even really had like a high school education really in depth. But my brother's 4 years older than me. He graduated from John Jay College right before I graduated from Baruch.
Okay. Well, do you have any like advice for those like immigrant students who like are going through the same struggles before like you went through?
Yeah, I think, a lot of times like we're looking to our parents or our village to show us the way or tell us what to do, and they don't know this world. Sometimes they can encourage you, and sometimes, quite frankly, they don't. Sometimes our students don't have that encouragement, right? But you're here in an environment where everybody's job is to ensure that you succeed. And so you should tap into that. Your professors are not out to get you. They want to prepare you for the next step in life. They want to prepare you to be successful. Your advisors are here. They're people who work in offices that if you take a minute and just sit and talk with them, that's one thing I learned at my time at Baruch. Like, I knew people in different offices because I was sort of forced to talk to them. But whenever I had an issue, I always had somebody that could help me with it because my parents couldn't. They didn't understand. And so if your first generation or your village, your biological village or the village around you where you live is not supportive of you, you have a village here on campus. Like, we all want our students to succeed. That's why we exist.
That was really nice. I like that question. Like, it made me think about my school experience too, in a way.
Yeah, and Kingsborough is very unique. A lot of times my students will leave here and they will go on to the 4-year, and sometimes they come back and visit. And this place is not just like a place you can get to real easily. So for students to come back and visit, it's like they really feel at home here. And when they get to their next destination, they're like, I don't feel that anymore. So whatever you're having here, take advantage of it, because I don't think you'll have it again.
Well, Dr. Keisha, thank you for having me today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Of course. Well, thank you for sharing your time wisdom, and powerful story with us today. Your dedication to education, equality, and empowerment is truly inspiring. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in for Kingsborough Focus. I'm your host, Noah, and we'll see you all next time to spotlight the remarkable people who make up Kingsborough Community College.